This model arose from a conversation that I was having with a manager of the local Department of Child Protection here in South Australia. And the conversation was about models of practice that reflect changes that are occurring here in South Australia and have occurred in other jurisdictions in the composition of the workforce in child protection. And perhaps a need for something that is straightforward and accessible and easily held in mind and delivered as part of the work. And I was asked what my thoughts were about this. And people who follow my work would know that really the cornerstone of my thinking and my practice is this pie. I varied it a little bit, the wording here, but this pie diagram that sits in the middle of this slide that starts with what is happening, what is really going on here, what's going on here for this person in this situation that is the focus of my attention in my work. What is happening here? What can I do to respond to what is happening? Or what can I do to respond therapeutically to what's really going on here? And how will I know that my response has made a difference? How will I know? These, I think, are three straightforward, accessible, I think, easily held in mind questions that are the cornerstone of my practice and the cornerstone of the content and models that I have developed and are delivered by not only by me but others who I've trained and who I've supported and supervised. So if we go back, if we talk about just step one, what is happening? What is happening for the child? What is happening for the parent or caregiver? Why I've got parent or caregiver is that in child protection, I think that this is a model that can be used in both protective intervention, so at the front end of our work, but also in the long-term guardianship or the guardianship part of our work, where children are perhaps in out-of-home care with family carers, kinship carers, or with foster carers or in residential care. But this is a model that can equally be applied in both protective intervention and also long-term or out-of-home care. So what's happening for the parent or caregiver? What's happening in the environment or circumstances? The child, the caregiver or parent, and the circumstances. What's happening here? We need to consider these things. And the answers to those questions will inform what we do. What are we going to do to respond to what is happening? So at the front end of the work, there might be a protective intervention, there may be a supportive intervention, there may be referral on. In the long-term guardianship, out-of-home care aspect of the work, there may be need again for a protective intervention. More commonly, there's a need to be turning our minds to how we can support the child, the caregiver, change in the environment or circumstance, and how we can, and what referrals we can make for service provision, either to support families in difficulty and prevent placement and out-of-home care occurring, or referrals to support children and young people, to support their caregivers at home, at school, to support changes in the environment or circumstances of both the caregiver and the child, and that can include training and development for caregivers. And then step 3, how will I know that my responses have made a difference? Well, I think we spend a lot of time focusing on problems that need fixing, that need a response in some way. And we spend relatively less time thinking about what success in our endeavours looks like. And the way our brain works is we tend to notice what's in our thoughts and overlook the things that are not in our thoughts. So we tend to notice problems more than we notice successes. And that's a problem, because if we don't notice our successes, we can't experience self-efficacy in the role. The role is just perceived to be one of problem solving all the time, which can be overwhelming and impact our own mental health and well-being and capacity to continue in the role. But also it impacts the people we're working with and their experience of our inordinate focus on problems that need to be solved. So more about that in a bit, perhaps. But so what we need to do is be thinking about what are the outcomes we're pursuing? What does it look? What do we expect to achieve from our work? What does that look like? Like in tangible terms, what behaviours or what aspects of the environment, what changes in the environment are we expecting to see that support the idea that our responses have made a difference? And how will we then notice their achievement? What are we putting in place to ensure that we see those things? Because if you don't go through this process, you'll miss them. You'll miss your successes. So step 4 starts with consideration of the question, well, what is maintaining what is happening? So we started with what's happening. Step 4 is what is maintaining what is happening. So this part of the model encourages the worker to think beyond just the obvious, beyond just the superficial, beyond just the main presenting problems that we need to address. What's going on behind those presentations? It encourages the worker to think a bit more deeply about what's going on and responding to the reasons for the initial behaviours of concerns. So in step 4, we want to think a bit more deeply about what's going on for the child, what is maintaining the concerns for the child. So the child may be exhibiting certain problematic behaviours. What are the reasons for those behaviours? Similarly, the parent or caregiver may be presenting with certain concerns. What are the reasons? What do they need us to respond to in order to alleviate what is maintaining those original obvious concerns or concerning aspects? Why is the environment as it is? What is maintaining the environment being of concern? We need to be turning our mind to not just what is happening, but what are the factors behind it. Once we identify those things, we can then think, well, what do we do? What can I do to support a therapeutic response to those underlying factors that give rise to the presenting concerns for the child, for the parent and caregiver, remembering that this can and should be done both at the protective intervention stage and also later in a child's journey in care. So what can we do to support a therapeutic response to the maintaining factors for the child, for the parent caregiver, and also to address the environment that is giving rise to the concerns. So the final step is step 6, and it's just a repeat of step 3. We're thinking more deeply about what's really going on underneath, what's behind the presentation, what's maintaining these concerns, what we can do to support a therapeutic response to them, how we know we've made a difference. So again, what outcomes are we pursuing? What does that look like? And how can what can we put in place to ensure that we'll notice when these outcomes are being achieved? So it's my view that this is a relatively straightforward practice model that can be applied in child protection in both the protective intervention and longer term out-of-home care contexts. If you're interested in more of what the content would look like in relation to this model, I would suggest or recommend to you, in the first instance, looking on my web and blog site. So the website is securestart.com.au, blog site is colbypearce.net, or you could also find a lot of relevant information in the second edition of A Short Introduction to Attachment and Attachment Disorder. So thank you for listening, and I hope this was of some use to you. If you took something useful from this video, please consider liking it and subscribe to my channel. That way you will be notified of new videos as I upload them.